anything specific compelled you to write a book that takes on our commonly held beliefs about people like Musk or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, it was, nothing to do with them as individuals. They're more representative of this bigger culture and this false notion, I guess, we've adopted about entrepreneurship over the past decades. So when I was writing, when I was working on the idea, or the idea sort of was evolving around what the book would be, it was about 5 years ago or so. And we're really at sort of the height of this latest phase of startup fever, right? You have your .com startup fever. Well, you have your PC era startup fever, the Steve Jobs startup fever. You have your .com startup fever. That's, Bezos and Musk, and PayPal. You have your, social media era startup fever, Zuckerberg, and you have your mobile, Web 2.0 startup fever, right? And that's, Uber and WeWork and all these sorts of apps. And that's where we were kind of at the pinnacle of at the time. And, I was living here in Toronto and I was traveling all over, and, it just was like entrepreneurship was suddenly, wasn't this economic activity, this thing people did, but it was like it was a verb, it was an adjective to describe this wonderful, tremendous, energetic force that was transforming our societies, our cities, our countries. It could do no wrong. Every university was opening up its, school of entrepreneurship or its institute of entrepreneurship. Every city was having its incubators and accelerators. There were co-working spaces that were promoting, startup and hustle and doing your own thing. And they were popping up everywhere. It just seemed like there was never a better time or a more exciting time or an easier time to be an entrepreneur. It just seemed like entrepreneur was booming. And I kind of wanted to capture that. I'd written about entrepreneurs in my other books, in articles for publications like Business Week in the past. And I was just fascinated by it and this boom of startups, which, I started looking at, I guess, at the beginning of the recession in 2008 when I was living in New York and writing about people who were laid off and starting their own businesses. And it was amazing. And I went out for breakfast with my friend, Greg Kaplan. Greg is a professor now at the University of Chicago School of Economics. He's a, award-winning economist, brilliant labor economist. And I was saying, I want to write this book. It's really interesting. It's going to be capturing this, how we're in the middle of this peak of entrepreneurship and startups, and there's never been a better, easier time to be an entrepreneur. And he's like, he's Australian. He's like, is it? And I'm like, yeah, look at all the WeWorks and the startups and, co-working spaces and all these young people in this restaurant, they're probably all starting businesses. And he's like, are they? And I was like, he's like, well, you should look at the figures. And I was like, oh, you silly academic and your figures. I'm a journalist. I'll make it all up. And he sent me, statistics and papers and things. And it showed the absolute opposite of what I was talking about, which is like entrepreneurship in terms that we would broadly define as people starting businesses or people going into work for themselves had been declining steadily in the United States and in other Western countries pretty much since the day I was born, 42 years ago, since the day Reagan came into office, right? Mm-hmm. And this was the total opposite of what we were seeing and hearing and promoting and, podcasts and magazines and entrepreneur hustle and all this sort of stuff. It's we're talking about entrepreneurship more. We're glorifying it more than ever. On one hand, we're deifying the people like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, who are sort of the faces of it. But on the statistical end of things and the actual numbers where it matters, fewer people are doing it, fewer people are succeeding at it. What was going on? And there was this disconnect between the entrepreneurship and the startup culture that we were venerating and the reality of entrepreneurship that 99% of people go into, and even the people who would start those types of businesses, high growth technology businesses, for example. And that disconnect really got me curious about this bigger question of what is entrepreneurship? How do we define it? How do we get so far away from the core, the soul of what this thing is? And the book is this kind of exploration of that.
Yeah, great. Do you think this deification of certain people prevents other people from becoming entrepreneurs because it looks unrealistic or reckless? Or on the flip side, do you think it causes people to take unnecessary risks because they think they have to emulate certain success stories?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a bit of both. There's no hard evidence to show one way or another. People are still out there starting all kinds of businesses, small businesses, hair salons, construction companies, one person accounting firms, medium sized manufacturing firms that make, the metal part on this pen or whatever. And there are people who are out there, doing the next crazy startup, an NFT backed green energy, renewable, online only mattress, food delivery scooter bullshit thing, right? That's like put all the buzzwords together and go out and do it. I think the harm is that in only talking about the sort of 0.5% of entrepreneurship and the thing that we really focus on, if you listen to all these entrepreneur podcasts, which there are so many of them, and it's just like entrepreneurship porn. Everyone's like, come on and tell us how you were successful and how you became successful and how we could become successful too. And this sort of one playbook where it's like, you have an idea, you get a pitch deck, you get it in front of these like VCs, you raise a bunch of money, you go out, blah, 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 blah. Not only are we setting people up for failure by not showing them the alternatives of different ways to build a business, but we're creating this danger where it's like we're narrowing the definition of what entrepreneurship is and excluding people who aren't part of that, and that makes them less valuable to investors. It makes them less seen by institutions. It shrinks the economic opportunities and the cultural opportunities that people have. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like sex education and all these controversies in the US about what to teach and what not to teach and whatever. And, it's like providing abstinence only education, whatever. It's like, people go and do it. People are going to do it. You can talk about it one way, you can educate it the other way. So maybe you want to actually address the broad spectrum of things because people are going to do it one way or another. And what actually best serves the greater good. But I think it is, there is a harm in that, right? Because from an investor level, from an institutional level, like if that's what's being shown as what's desirable, then they're only going to invest in those types of companies, unless the company that may not make that massive, huge return, but like could actually give, the type of return that's good. Or, the same with civic builders. Like cities want to build their innovation zones and entrepreneurship hubs, but like they actually need a lot of restaurants and small businesses and concrete construction companies. And that's the bedrock of what the foundation of their economy is. But they're being distracted in the other way. Academia, they 50% of the papers written on entrepreneurship and in university departments are about high growth companies, high tech, even though, venture capital, like it funds less than a percentage of the companies and the economic activity out there. So it's, if you're only focusing on the sort of superstars, you're missing the bigger picture. And that has ramifications down the chain for economics, for culture, for the opportunities people have. You're misserving your population, whatever that population is. And for the individual entrepreneurs, again, it's like they don't know that there's other opportunities out there. The entrepreneur that wants to start a business doesn't know that there's better and more reasonable and more common alternatives than like writing a pitch deck and trying to get on, Shark Tank. And getting in front of a bunch of VCs.
Yeah, that's great. One thing your book really shows is that it's okay for your goals to not be the same. For example, one of my favorite people in the book is Tracy, who owns Rockaway. Rockaway Beach Bakery, and she's just a perfect example of how most entrepreneurs aren't out to become billionaires or disrupt industries. They just want to live life on their own terms. How did you find her?
Yeah. Tracy Abalski opened a bakery in Rockaway Beach, a bakery and coffee shop. Rockaway Beach is a part of New York City that's actually on the ocean, on the beach. You may know it from the Ramones song. You may know it if you've flown into JFK Airport over the ocean and you're like, wait, there's waves and apartment buildings down there. Where am I? Or if you live in New York and you're a surfer, you know it because you can take the train, the subway, the A train, and like go surfing. And that's how I knew it. I surfed there when I lived in New York, and I knew a few of the businesses. And to me, it just seemed this really interesting thing. I wanted to show about the lifestyle business. Now, the lifestyle business in the world of the startup is a negative term. It's an insult. Oh, what you're building, what you're pitching me there, I don't know. I'm not going to invest in it. It seems like a lifestyle business. right? It's just something that like, it's a business you want to start and you're going to make money off it, but you're just going to make enough money to like, live and run the business and buy a house and send your kids to school and summer camp and go on vacations. Like, nah, that's bad. Like to most people, that's a dream, right?
Yeah.
And so Tracy, who's a pastry chef, was working in some of the top restaurants in Manhattan, getting written up in the New York Times and all these critical acclaim for the stuff she was making. Like she was ground down, she was exhausted, she hated her job. She worked for, dick chefs who were, sexually assaulting the serving staff and whatever. And it was just like, why am I doing this? I just kind of want to live out here by the beach. I want to be able to surf every day. I want to do things on my own terms. I want to bake the food that I make. And she eventually did it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, if not most of them, go into that business for that, right? I'm fed up. I want more freedom. I don't want to work for these bums anymore. I want to wear the clothes I want to wear. I want to play the music I want to play. I want to do the type of work I want to do. I want to serve the kind of people I like to serve. I want to do whatever it is. I want to approach things in my way. I want to make the podcast I want, right? And that's what she did. And it's amazing because she really captured it. She worked her butt off. She works long hours and on her feet all day and very taxing physical labor. But she gets to surf every day. She gets to bike or skateboard along the boardwalk from her apartment by the beach to the bakery that she owns. And success for her isn't like, and then when I sell the business and I make, $1 million, I'm going to go to Costa Rica. It's like success is every day. And not every day is pretty and not every day is perfect. But, when you look at her lifestyle, it's enviable.
Yeah.
Certainly for me.
Yeah, same here. I would love to live a life like that. You wrote that she put up an Instagram post once at 2 p.m. saying that the bakery is closing at 2 because the waves are too good. She has to go surfing. Like, what a great story. And she just totally embodies that spirit of someone who values freedom over money. And
it's a tricky thing, right? I mentor students at my old university who are about to graduate or whatever, and they're trying to figure out what to do with their lives. So it's like the real lost souls who are like, maybe I want to be a writer or a journalist. And I'm like, all right, send them to David. And I was talking to someone the other day, and she's like, well, how many hours a week do you work? I'm like, I don't know. Like some weeks I might spend like half the week going to like out to find the perfect loaf of bread, or like going out and like surfing, or, doing things that have nothing to do with work. And like, I don't make as much money as my friends who work real jobs at ad firms or whatever, but like that freedom is kind of priceless. It's kind of like, that has a value too. That isn't necessarily a monetary one. And people forget that again, because we're venerating the financial success. You got to remember that like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, like, divorce, kids who don't talk to them. Like it's the model of that, grind. That's all that matters. That's a central part of the startup myth. And it's in reality a horrible thing, right? To aspire to, that work is the only thing that matters. That work is the only part of your identity that is essential, and success is the sort of value of that.